Russell Price, we've been getting some real tepid economic data of late. How does this reconcile with the strong jobs numbers we've been getting? What am I supposed to believe?
Well, I think the jobs number are going to lead to better economic pace of growth in the quarters ahead. But in the first quarter, we had some exceptionally bad weather, particularly here in the Northeast. And also we're seeing some burdens on trade data from the very strong dollar and business investment spending, particularly from oil and gas. That's slowing down for obvious reasons. And combined, I think we're going to see similar to what we saw last year with a weak first quarter, except this year will be positive. And our projection is about for 1.4% GDP growth. But beyond that, I think we do start to pick up the momentum.
Speaking of oil and gas, when are we going to see that dividend from lower oil prices? Because a lot of economists thought we're going to see it in January, in February. Are Americans just wary of opening their wallets?
No, I think that'll begin to wear off once we get into better weather. Certainly consumers are benefiting from better job growth, and wages and salaries are starting to do a little bit better. And that the average American household is going to see about $750 worth of savings this year from lower gasoline prices. Eventually that's going to flow through to the consumer spending. Even if we don't quite get there this year, if the dollar is a bigger headwind and keeps GDP growth below 3% this year, I still think that we build on a better foundation for growth going forward.
And will the average American be selling their home in the spring? So let's talk a little bit about the spring selling season. We had a good February home sales number. Will that continue?
Housing, I think, is still suffering from a lack of supply in both new housing and existing housing. That is really the big issue this year. So we'd like to see more people selling their house and moving maybe up to a little bit better, moving on up, as they used to say. And so I think the market would like to see a little bit more of that, because we've gone from a situation in 2007 where we were oversupplied on housing and undersupplied on buyers, and that's completely reversed. And so we need more housing. That's good for underlying economic growth this year, next year, and the year after, because we need more houses built.
Well, affordability remains high in housing because of low interest rates, which brings us back to the Fed. Everything leads back to the Fed. So what's your view? What's Janet Yellen going to do?
Well, I don't know exactly what she's going to do, but if I were in her position, I would wait to see how the impact of the U.S. dollar being so strong impacts the economy. Because in my view, the dollar, where it stands today, that already is a tightening of economic conditions. So we've already tightened to some degree. See how that plays out. See what that does more fully in the economy in the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter before we start raising interest rates to layer on top of the impediment that we're going to see from the strong dollar.
And then finally, speaking of the strong dollar, how dangerous is the central bank war where Mario Draghi, he's cutting, we're raising, dollar's getting stronger? You know, what's the end game there?
Well, the way I see it is this year, because of the dollar strength and the euro's weakness, it's essentially taking some of our economic growth and giving it to Europe, and a little bit as well to Japan and other places that have seen currency depreciation. I think for now, I think that's okay, simply because Europe could use the momentum. And in the long run, a better balance of global growth is good for all of us. So we may not grow quite to our potential this year because of the exceptionally strong dollar. It should take about a full percentage point off of GDP this year. But I think beyond that, I think it's good for the global economy that Europe gets a little bit more of its momentum back, and the global economy grows in unison.
All right. Thanks a lot, Russell.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching The Street.